Yeah, so we booked a trip to Austin, Texas, for the Rogue Invitational, which I would normally go with Fit Aid. But we're going to Houston first because there's this place called Alpha Land, which is like this iconic social media gym now. It's like on 22 acres of land. It's got 3 different gyms on it, and then like a hotel, a freaking like a restaurant, all this stuff. It's just like, it's super well known in the social media space. We're going to go there first, try to podcast with a bunch of people out there, like social media people. And then from there, we'll drive to Austin, 3-hour drive, and we'll be at the Rogue Invitational. And then we'll podcast with people in the CrossFit space this time. And then we booked another flight to Miami, Florida in January for Wadapalooza, which now Wild Chips wants me to do content for them there since they know that I'm going out there. So I'll get paid to do that. And yeah, so like I said, you're always within 5 people of like knowing people. That's kind of why we like are able to do that, because now we have podcasts lined up and scheduled to be able to like we're investing in the show. So we're like flying out because we get to talk to these people who are going to like kind of push the show forward more, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is like the what the message that you're trying to like send?
I just want to provide value in the way of showing people who have gone through like shit, who have gone through stuff. The whole message is like on social media, we see the glitz and the glam that people show. Like nobody wants to show the nitty gritty stuff, And I know for a lot of people out there, it's not just glitz and glam. Like there's sacrifice, there's BS that you deal with every single day. We just talked about it for an hour about the stuff that I go through. Because even on my little social media presence, I think that people look at my life outwardly and they see like, wow, he's like things are awesome. When it's like, when we really talk about it, like things aren't all that great. They just look great,
right.
And so that's what I want to show is these people who have 1 million followers. How did they get there? What are the things that they did? What kind of stuff did they go through in their past that kind of made them have this urgency or this like calling to try to acquire attention from other people and to try to amass however much money they have or like do the businesses that they have, and what did they go through to accomplish the goals, to accomplish like becoming a professional CrossFit athlete or like having a multi-million-dollar business or, whatever it is. So I'm just trying to show people the sacrifices that people actually make to get to a position in life where, and mostly people that like followed, so the podcast is called The Counterculture. So people who like follow the path outside of what you're told to do, like the 9-to-5 job. I have talked to people with 9-to-5 jobs because I think that their story is interesting.
Sure.
And their life is interesting. But there are also people that I know went through like massive sacrifice in their life to like even just be a healthy person, So yeah. Does that answer the question?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I like the name, The Counterculture. I mean, going against, in many ways, what were the messages that we're getting pounded with.
Right.
All the time, which is, fame and money and influence. All these things are the ticket for satisfaction, where, there are many who would get behind this microphone and say to you, I have fame, I have money, I have influence, and all of them have left me deeply wanting. And you sit in a room with someone who has none of these things, but has a network of very healthy relationships.
Yeah.
And they would speak to you of a life satisfaction that is not known by those. And so where does that come from? And, who is the ultimate authority to speak to us on that which is really most important to us? And that is, being healthy people. I mean, this is, you're running a studio here that is designed towards, strengthening the body. You're interested. You're a dude that's interested in health.
Yep.
And there's also, the question needs to be asked. What about health of the soul? What about health of the interior of the fabric of who we are? I mean, how do we address that?
Right. And that's also what I want to address in the podcast too, is I just think that the culture right now is so much so like sex driven, drugs, money, fame, like you were saying. And I think that's really deterred us from like the path. And I'm just like the counterculture being also that I want to promote like not drinking alcohol, not like being promiscuous, not doing drugs, all things that like admittedly I have partaken in to a degree.
Right.
But as I've gotten older, I don't see the value in it, and I just don't think that it's beneficial towards anybody. And when people say the things like everybody's got to have their party stage or go through this, I'm like, really? Do they? I don't think so. I think it actually kind of like tarnishes the soul a little bit, because when you go through these stages of like, I guess to be frank, like wanting to sleep with a bunch of people or whatever, it like does tarnish your soul a little bit, because slowly but surely sex becomes less valuable as an emotional bond type of thing, and it just becomes something that you're just doing. Not that I've like partaken in a ton of promiscuous like sex or anything like that, but the same thing can be said with like partying, right? Like eventually it's not just the fun of like getting drunk. It just becomes like a routine. It's something that you're doing. And eventually it becomes something that is like you're doing it without really knowing that you're doing it to deal with things outside of the drinking. And I know that that's something that definitely happened to me, was that I was never an alcoholic. I never had a problem with alcohol. I gave up alcohol though. And as I gave up drinking, I realized like, man, I was actually getting drunk on the weekends, I think, to deal with issues throughout the week. It wasn't actually fun. It was the same thing that I did every single weekend. It just became routine.
Right.
And when I like was able to come to that realization and like, and give it up, I've been able to deal with issues way better.
Yeah.
Well,
the statement made by the philosopher, I think it was Socrates, who said the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think I'm all for having a great time and everything, but I'm also really, I really, as you and I have talked over the years, it's really important to reflect on our lives.
Yeah.
Where we're going. And if we're just strictly, if life is just, the ultimate reality is just the natural universe in which we live. If we're just, as one gentleman I spent 3 hours with, who's an atheist, this past week, talking to him about whether or not God exists.
Yeah.
If we're just strictly, as he called us, we're advanced machines, just a grouping of atoms, and that's it. Then go out and have all the sex you want. I mean, you're an animal, behave like one, because life is going to be over quickly, and that's it. But if you have a soul, if you are designed, as one philosopher said, if you will always exist, you will never cease to exist, and there's nothing you can do about it,
right?
Except for make your future existence as pleasurable as possible while in this existence. Then you examine, what does it mean as a person with a soul to have a sexual relationship with somebody else who I'm not lifetime committed to?
Yeah.
And that then we then begin to live at a level that is quite a bit different.
Yeah, 100%. With that being said, welcome everybody to the Counterculture Podcast. This is my friend Steve. I oftentimes refer to him as my spiritual mentor when I talk about you, and a business mentor too. He's somebody that I've cultivated a relationship with for, I don't know, how long have we been doing this, sitting down and talking? Like 3 years, 4 years?
4 years maybe.
Before COVID, right?
Yeah.
So Steve, in the beginning of every show, I try to give people their flowers, right? I try to, at least people that I've had a close relationship with. And so a couple things about you. I think that you are a big big reason that I've kind of gone from the cool atheist that I was into, I wouldn't say quite yet a Christian, but definitely a believer in God and probably the Christian God. And you've just done so much for my emotional, spiritual, and mental health as a support system that I can't thank you enough. So I really appreciate that. And every single girl that I have, you know, as a client, all of my lacrosse girls, they all are in love with you too. So I can't say enough good things about Steve. He's been a great support system for everybody, basically, that I know that comes from Arrowhead.
You probably should explain why they're in love, why I know these girls.
Oh, he's their coach. He's their coach.
Pretty crucial.
Yeah, that's a crucial piece of the puzzle for sure. Yeah, because that might be weird. Yeah, but he is their lacrosse coach, and if he's done this much for me, he's definitely done more for them because he gets to spend more time with them. So yeah, appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Justin. That's I appreciate that, and you know, I've noticed in you just a level of honesty, you know, that I think when we first got together, one of the things I said to you is that, you know, I love a diverse set of opinions that people have. I spend a lot of time with individuals that don't agree with me on certain things. And at the time, you know, you and I have had different perspectives, but I've always appreciated your honesty to look at me and say, you know, I don't agree with that, or I'm not certain about that. And so I appreciate that. And even just in our conversation this morning that we've had, just hearing how you just process life is it's been something that I've admired in you as a young man.
Thanks, Steve. So a lot of times I will go to Steve if I have an issue, but I think that you have I know you have a really crazy story that kind of got you to be the man that you are today. And if you don't mind sharing it, I would like to hear it, and like for other people to hear it. I think that this will be one of the most valuable podcasts that I ever do, to be honest. And again, because you've added so much value to my life, but it's not without the life experience that you've had to this point. So if you don't mind sharing kind of how you became, I think you were starting to explore Christianity in college, right?
Yeah. So I grew up in a home where, you know, had some contact with things of life and faith, and always felt that there was, you know, something out there. I remember I was like 7 years old once. I was always a, you know, touch football player and everything. I was very involved in sports, and I remember one time I had to run in from a backyard game that we were having. I went to the bathroom, came out, and I stopped at the screen door, and I thought, what is life? I mean, why am I different than those guys out there? How is it that I even know who I am? I mean, I had this moment of like, what is consciousness? I mean,
how old are you?
I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, geez.
And then it just flashed away, and the next thing I know, I'm out catching passes in the backyard. But so I've always been one who's thought, you know, what really is the purpose of life? Why are we here? I spent a lot of time in a fishing boat in northern Wisconsin growing up, and I wasn't the greatest fisherman, so I had a lot of time to think about it.
Sure.
And I'd look up in the stars at night, and I'm like, is this an accident, or is there some order to it all? It certainly seemed beautiful, and it seemed like, you know, very orderly in many ways. But then there was also so much suffering and hardship in the world. So I get to college, and I hear people starting to talk about this person, Jesus of Nazareth, and I had some familiarity with him, and started learning a little bit about the teachings of him, and learned that this God that I kind of had a sense that existed, but was one that I was trying to stay on the good side of, because I was afraid of dying and not being on the good side of him.
Right.
And I learned that the Christian story is one where by you know, placing faith in Christ, one's right standing before God is instantly taken care of. Mm-hmm. And so you then live life in a way of gratitude for that, as opposed to worrying about whether or not my resume looks good enough, at the end of my life. And to me, that was tremendously a source of peace and contentment that I had not experienced before.
Okay.
And so, but then I have these friends that went to Ivy League schools and everything, and they started just ripping apart what I believed. It's like, you can't trust what the Bible has to say. God probably, scientists have shown that we don't need God because life has been created in a test tube. And so I went through a 2-year period of really going to graduate school and really studying to see whether or not this new faith that I had was actually rested on a solid foundation.
What was your actual degree in?
I got a Master of Arts degree in religious studies.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yep. Nice. And so and I was kind of surprised to find out how deep and how wide the foundation was, and how these attacks that I had heard were really more emotional attacks rather than really
logical,
intellectual attacks. So I've been spending the last 40 years of my life acting. I'm a business person. I've been bivocational, and I spent a lot of time as a community chaplain, where I'll come alongside of business people that might not necessarily go to a church, but they may think, maybe there is some divine nature of God. If I go to a pastor, they're paid to give me the answers. Maybe a business person, who has some training, can speak to me in a way that maybe a professional doesn't. And so I've spent years and years and years coming alongside of people, helping them put together their faith.
Yeah.
Helping them come to an idea of what it is that they believe and why they believe it.
Sure. So obviously we connected because of my ex, Rachel. Mm-hmm. What exactly was it that got you kind of interested in wanting to talk to someone like me?
Well, it's really, I can remember exactly where I was.
Okay.
And exactly, there was a discussion about baptism of your son, Kate.
Mm. Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Rachel was like, I'd kind of like to do that, but Justin is like, he likes researching things and looking into things. He's really into science. He's not exactly certain if that's the route he wants to go. And I'm like, I like this guy already. I've never met him. And I said, I told her that, this is exactly what, I love science and I love researching, and maybe the two of us could get together. And so she made the connection.
Yeah.
We sat down together, and within 15 minutes, I realized this is the kind of person who has truth at the pinnacle of, of his life, that, and a lot of people would say that they do, but they're really interested in only, pursuing what they want to do.
Yeah.
The phrase, which I really don't like, what that works for me. It's kind of like what works for me is really center into the universe, not so much what ultimately is true. And I felt that you had that, and so I desired that I wanted to spend some time with you.
People, I think, are more interested in their truth than the truth.
Yes.
Right? Is that what you would say?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, that works for me. This is my heart's desire. And these things are important for us. We have to care for ourselves.
Yeah.
But the scriptures say, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And Jesus looked at Pontius Pilate and he said, he who is of the truth will hear my voice. In other words, if you earnestly desire to know the truth about life, you will seek and you will find. Yep. But if you have a dog in the hunt, and if you have like presuppositions that you want to support, or that you already know what you want to find before you're open to finding truth, then I think you have to really reevaluate that.
Yeah. Where do you think the divide between like what the truth is and like people wanting their own truth to be what's true happens, right? Because I think for like me, I've always tried to live my life in truth in the way that I don't want to lie to people because I feel like I would rather be an asshole or looked at that way for 30 seconds while I tell you the honest to God truth.
That's good.
Than be the person who like lies to you. And then a year later you find out and now you hate me for longer or dislike me. I don't really like to use the word hate, but you don't like me for a lot longer. Why do you think that people kind of live the opposite way, where they're like, not just that they don't want to tell people the truth, but they also don't want to kind of see the truth in general because they're more interested in how they're feeling in that moment.
Yeah, that's good. I thought of the ancient Jewish scriptures when you said that faithful are the wounds of a friend. In other words, sometimes it's really hard, but it's really a good thing to be able to come to somebody who you love and care for and say, this is the observation that I have. I'm not going to barge into your life and play, cop here, but I, as a friend who loves and cares for you, I just want to give you an observation. And I think left untended to, I think there could be some consequences. I mean, you have to decide, but this is, and once a relationship is built and there's trust, I think trust is the most significant thing in the universe.
Yeah.
This is, God simply wants, if somebody were to say to me, what does God really want from you, Justin? What does God want from me? And it's just a simple step of trust in his direction to say, I trust you that your perspective on my life is true.
Yeah.
And so I think when people are pursuing their own agenda, they are, and God lets them. He will not walk into a room he's not invited to. He will not smash the door down. The scriptures say, behold, he stands at the door and knocks.
Yeah.
Anyone hears his voice, he will open the door and come in and dine with him together. This beautiful picture of a gentlemanly figure offering himself to come in and be companion, counselor, teacher, advisor into another person's life. And everybody hears the knock. Mm-hmm. At some point, it's really, really loud. The more we ignore it, it becomes softer and softer and softer. And so I think those who hear the knock but ignore it think, I think wrongly, that they are in a better position to be CEO over their life, rather than the one who's created them.
Sure.
And so there's a lot there, but I think that's a big reason. And Jesus says, "Hey, listen, take my burden upon you. It's light, and my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." In other words, the way that I have prescribed for human beings to live is actually the easiest, most fulfilling way, rather than the hardest, the most difficult way. And you and I just spent an hour talking about how difficult life can be when these other pathways are the dictated pathways upon which people are living. Mm-hmm. It can create angst and difficulty and strife, where sometimes it's hard to look at somebody and tell the truth, but in the end, it's the thing that actually makes life much easier.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like there's like a weight off your shoulder as well. Like you feel good about what happened. So a way that's kind of manifested in my life, I, for a long time, was an atheist. Mm-hmm. You know that. And I think that a majority of that was because I was trying to live life on my own terms. I didn't want to answer to anybody. I've been that way throughout my entire life. Yeah. Like the cops couldn't tell me shit. Teachers couldn't tell me anything. My parents couldn't tell me anything. And like, I ultimately always felt like I knew better. And that has gotten me to a point in my life, right? And a good point in my life. However, I think it's more self-serving than it is anything else, right? Like you can say that you're doing things for other people, but in the end, you're still kind of thinking about your return, right? You're thinking about like how it's going to benefit you in the long run. And so I think for a long time, that's kind of why I was hesitant to also look into the God thing or believe in God
Yeah.
or whatever it is,
Right.
because I was self-serving.
And from what I know of your background, brother,
Yeah.
you had every reason to be, kind of locked down that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I still am to a point, you know, lots of trauma, lots of dealings throughout
Yep.
life for sure. The knock for God got really loud recently. And it was due to an injury, believe it or not. And so you asked me before we started about how CrossFit's going and stuff. And so I'll share that now, how it's going. I got injured pretty bad recently. So much so that I had to pull out of this big competition that I was, signed up for. I qualified for all this stuff. I think, oh no, you didn't come to one of the qualifier workouts, but regardless. So about 8 weeks out from the competition, I hurt my neck right before I went to Hawaii, and it ended up getting better. Came back from Hawaii. I was 100% better, at least so I thought. And then 5 weeks out, I read a book called Outwitting the Devil, right? And so actually 8 weeks out, I kind of had the knock on my door where it was like, you don't need to be focusing on CrossFit right now, And then 5 weeks out, I'm reading Outwitting the Devil by, what is his name? Maxwell? No, not Maxwell. I don't know. Regardless, it doesn't matter. He is just a good author. And in the book, he talks about how people have their coming to Jesus moment almost. He doesn't use those terms, but when they meet with their other self is what he talks about. It's your higher self.
Yep.
And to me, what I think that is when God is moving through you, right? And so I read the book and I realized that day, I'm I'm not supposed to be doing this, man. Right now is not my time. This is not my time for CrossFit, but I don't listen. Right. So the next week I tweak my back a little bit and I'm it's a normal training injury. Training's really hard right now. I can train through this. I can compete like this if I needed to, and I could have, if competition was that weekend, I for sure could have. The knock was just a little bit there. I train, I go to PT, do all the things that I need to do. The next week, I tweak my armpit. So I felt like I physically tore my armpit.
Oh, my word.
Right? And so I couldn't do a pull-up or anything like that. The knock got a little bit louder. Hey, dummy, wake up, And then finally the next week, I injured my neck so bad that I it gets to a point where the pain, I wake up, I'm in excruciating pain the next day. I immediately go to PT as fast as I can get an appointment, go to chiropractor, all these different things. And I'm just praying and hoping the entire week, because it was the week before the Monster game. So I had to fly out and go, to Missouri. I'm sleeping, praying, hoping that I wake up injury free. But it gets to the point where it turns out to be a nerve issue.
Oh, wow.
And so I can't do a push-up. I can't push a 25-pound kettlebell overhead. I can't do all these different things. The strength is completely gone in my arm. It completely humbles me. And so I looked at it, and I was telling you before that sometimes I feel like God puts signs, I guess, or he speaks to you in a way where it's stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
This is what you're supposed to be doing. Focus on this. And so the knock just got louder and louder. And what I like to say to people is, he slapped me on the back real quick with the back. He slapped me in the face with the armpit. And then finally he's like, you idiot. And he punched me in the face. You know what I mean? Or rather he snapped my neck off, And so that was a complete wake up call to me to start listening to my heart, which is how I believe God works through me. Listen to my heart and do the things that need attention right now. And the things that needed attention was the podcast was starting. I realized that this is really what I need to be doing, because this is how I can connect with a lot of people and how I can spread a message to a lot of people. I truly believe that one of my callings on earth is to try and affect as many people as possible in a positive way and to spread a positive message to people. I think that my journey is such that I impact people's lives because, coaching and my dealings with, whatever. I think that is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Like I'm supposed to be spreading a message and a worthwhile message through what I've been through and helping other people because of that. And yeah, so that's where I kind of felt God's voice being like, hey, wake up. Like CrossFit will always be there, you know, and my goal has always been 35 to 49, that age group, to go pro. And I was pushing it as if I was trying to get to the games, which is like the top competition this year. And that's just not what the reality of my situation was. And that was never the goal either. So yeah, I definitely feel what you were saying there.
Yeah. The words of my favorite author, C.S. Lewis, come to mind, where he says, God speaks to us in our conscience.
Yep.
He whispers to us in our pleasure, but he shouts to us in our pain.
That's it.
And it's like, it's his megaphone, pain is, to get the attention, you know, of a world that, you know, may be, you know, going off, you know, living a life independent of his desire to, you know, care for people along the way.
Yeah. So for sure, because you always hear those stories of people becoming hyper successful after a breakup, or, you know, they lose everything and they have nowhere else to go but up. And then I think that too is probably God being like, hey, you know, you needed to wake up. You needed a wake up call. These are the things that are going to drive you into success for the next chapter or whatever. Because I remember vividly, and Heather probably remembers this, when I realized in Missouri that I had to make the call. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I don't like that, you know, like, cause I felt like a quitter.
And you'd put in so much in prep.
Yeah. And I felt like a quitter.
Yeah.
I was like, but I couldn't help it. You know, I even to the day, like I didn't make the call until the day of, like an hour before my heat was supposed to go, to drop out of the competition, because I just like really hoped that a miracle would happen, and it wasn't going to happen, you know? And, I don't really believe in crying that much, you know, or like crying in front of my woman, I guess, because whatever. And I couldn't help it. Like I just broke down in tears, and it was so painful. But immediately I shifted my perspective, because this is kind of like what I do and what I preach, is shifting your perspective. And I was like, you know what? This is actually a blessing in disguise. Like, it's a sign that I'm not on the right path. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. All right, what's the right path? What am I supposed to be doing? What should I be focusing on? And I believe that God, throughout my entire life, has told me what I need to be doing. And I just never listened.
Yeah.
Because I know better.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we can certainly get distracted in life, and for sure, I'd taken a job out of graduate school, and I was just telling this story to somebody the other day, and I wanted to serve the community by helping people. My background was as a CPA, and I wanted to help people in the financial area of their lives, and I was doing it. It was really working well, and then I was given an opportunity to work in a partnership with a gentleman who is a dear friend of mine today, and we were doing really well in doing corporate work, working with corporations and their finances, and being very, very successful. We were hiring people to work with us and everything, and the two of us were partners in this. And my mind now was being filled with, you know, people that we had to work on profit sharing agreements, and we had employee issues. And I remember taking my son Jake to a soccer practice on a Saturday morning, and he's like, Dad, I think 5 times. And I'm driving the van, and I'm thinking about a conversation I have to have with somebody after I drop them off on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, you're distracted.
And I'm thinking, I have completely gone off what I've desired to do here. I mean, it's like, this is, a very, you know, prestigious pursuit that I'm in, but I've seen that it's pulled me away from, you know, what I've really desired to do, and that is to be an attentive, present father. And so I went in the next week and resigned from my partnership with my friend, and again, the two of us remain wonderful friends. He went off and has built this, you know, just tremendously successful practice, but but yeah, there's sometimes we can get off track and we can lose sight of what we know to be our inner values, and we tend to get in a side eddy, where we're spinning, and it's really helpful to have people. Sometimes the Lord used my son's voice that day to get us back. And that's what friendships are about as well, to be able to be in a trusting relationship, to say, what do you think? I mean, if you ever feel that there is something that's happening in my life that I'm unaware of, that other people can see, that I can't, you have permission to point that out to me. Please do it, with a soft hand, but you have permission to point that out. And this is when life, really, again, back to the idea of trust. This is when life begins to be lived at the level that we're meant to live.
Yeah, and I think that that is the duty of a good friend, is to tell you the truth and to keep you on track. I just had this talk with one of my kids, that throughout life you're going to realize that some friends are conditional friends, and your good friends are always going to be the ones that tell you what hurts, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to get mad at, and think that they're out to get you sometimes or whatever. But your real friends are the ones who keep it 100% with you all the time, and your conditional friends are the ones that you will lose eventually. And soon you will find out, or not soon for him, but throughout time you will find out that, man, these were only my friends when I was going to the bar with them, or they were only my friends when we would play basketball, or things of that nature. And eventually they will thin out. You will lose them. They won't be around forever, because eventually you're going to want people around you that you just care about and care about you the same way. And you're going to find that out, hopefully not in a rough way like I did, but you will find it out eventually. And it's in your best interest probably to start figuring that out the younger you are,
Yeah, absolutely. We just talked about that just a minute ago, Justin, that 1 year in your late 20s and early 30s is equivalent to 10 years in your 50s in terms of the ability that you have to be able to build networks and to surround yourself with people who are, who are going to be, genuine friends to you. I mean, I heard a guy once say that you're going to end up being the average of the 5 closest people in your life.
Yeah.
And so you want to ask yourself, who are those 5 people? And because I'm going to reflect, I'm going to reflect them. And it's important to build a community around it, because it's so tragic for me, as I've been through spent a lot of work in the community, that when tragedy does come into a person's life and they don't have the network built around them, they're kind of alone. And I think that 16 years ago now, our 19-year-old daughter Stacy died in a car accident.
Yeah.
And the call came in from the sheriff to say, "Is this Steve Meyer?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he gave me the news. It's the horrific call nobody ever wants to get. And instantly our community just basically carried us, and they, in a sense, they still have been.
Yeah.
And when that type of thing happens to people who have maybe a dabbling of people around them, I don't know how you make it through that. And it's not just the sudden death of a loved one, but it's other things, going through a divorce or sickness, and we're people that are, we're created in God's image, I believe, which means God exists mysteriously in a Trinity.
Yep.
Three distinct personalities, but one essential nature, which don't fully understand that. But if I could fully understand the nature of God, I would suspect that the explanation of Him would be something that would be odd, that for a finite mind to be able to fully understand an infinite mind. But being created existing in a community tells us that we too, being created in His image, are also designed to be the same way. We're designed to function in a community of people, of trusting relationships.
Yeah.
And this is what, I think this is a beautiful thing that you can continue to emphasize, in this your podcast, because the messaging that goes out to so many, especially young people, which I work with, is a message of isolation.
Yeah.
Spend time by yourself. Make sure you get enough, you get enough people to be, admiring you online and everything that takes you away from intimacy with people. I mean, this year, my team at the high school was the most, I felt, socially disconnected group that I've ever had in 14 years of coaching.
This past year?
Yes.
Really?
In terms of just being alive as people.
Sure.
I could just tell that, and we know this just by some of the data in mental health, that that 2001 or 2011 was the year that on smartphones that social media apps were first available. And from that point going forward, as the social dilemma documentary on Netflix points out, that from that point forward, the number of suicides and mental health issues among adolescent girls has just exploded.
Yeah.
And it's because they've been forced into these pockets of isolation. I mean, it's like, I'm measuring you, you're measuring me. Do I measure up to the standard that's so readily available on social media?
Right.
So it hinders their ability to develop good relationships with people.
Yeah.
There's always a device in front of them. And
yeah, I think that we've been kind of fooled to think that. So I think it's very important to like have a tribe and know who your tribe is.
Yeah.
But I also do say it's better to be in no company than bad company. Because if you're in bad company, you can stray from the path, bad things can happen. I don't think that you should be in no company, but I think for periods of time, it's okay to be in no company. Like if you're like hyper focused on a goal or whatever it is. But that being said, I think that we've kind of been duped into thinking that the social media, your following is your tribe, and those are your friends, and the people that like you is your source of validation. And that gives like kids kind of a reason to not go out and have face-to-face interaction with people and connect people with on an emotional level, things of that nature. And I think, like you said, the numbers and the stats, they all kind of show that that's not true, at least not entirely true, right? Like, I think that it is so important, not just in business, but real relationships, to get out there and go talk to people face-to-face, because you don't know what kind of intentions people have unless you actually get to see them.
Yeah.
Not to mention there's like a warm feeling that you get from talking to people one-on-one in a room together instead of just like texting them over the phone,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, again, back to what we were talking about. We're designed to interact with human beings and not to be isolated. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that being in bad company can be the very initially subtly, it can pull you away from from healthy living.
Yeah.
And it is better to be to turn your back, to say, if I have to go at it alone, I will, and that's a preference to going at it in the midst of people who I know are going to be a distraction. But the best idea, the greatest ideal, is for us to be pursuing the call that we feel we have on our lives.
Yep.
In community with other people who can help us along the way, and that's where living really can get sweet. And it's back to what we talked about earlier, where this this right standing before God comes through Christ's sacrifice. Then we're called to live in a way that says, I'm thankful.
Yeah.
Not that I hope I can do enough, but I'm thankful for what I've been given. The whole methodology then turns to what again, Dallas Willard, the philosopher from USC, says, the inversion principle, which we now live with an attitude of, I'm going to give, and in my giving, I actually receive.
Yeah.
Which is completely inverted from what is naturally thought to happen.
Sure.
Or in order, I want to seek to be at the top. Well, the way you get it at the top, Jesus tells us, you serve.
Yeah.
So you come into the room and you say, what can I do to help?
Right.
And I heard an interview recently where a new CEO of a very large company, I don't think it was Fortune 500, came into a huge warehouse full of all the employees of the company, hundreds of them in there. And the gentleman got up and said, I probably am least qualified of anybody in this room to be the CEO of this company. And the messaging, and he meant it, and the messaging throughout the people was, we'll do anything for that guy.
That's crazy.
We will do anything for that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is that he came to basically say, I'm here to learn and to serve you because I need you, and I think this is, I mean, the data again bears it all out. And when we give our life away, we're told in the scriptures that it then comes back to us in a measure that was completely unanticipated. And all these things again go completely against, and this is what I love the name of your podcast, the cultural movement. The cultural movement is the opposite of all that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the ticket to happiness is to gain.
Yeah.
The best way to live is to be at the top. And do only what works for you. Possess your life as opposed to give it away. And so I love that. And we could sit here and talk. I mean, I love the social sciences and the studies of human behavior. I love happiness research.
Yeah.
I mean, happiness research bears out everything that this obscure rabbi from the first century laid out to say, this is the way to live.
Yeah.
Social scientists today are saying, well, wait a minute. People are happier when they give rather than receive. It's like this, it bears it out in the laboratories of today, which is, to me, as a guy who likes data and evidence, just gets my heart singing.
It's interesting though, too, because like all of the like top business gurus on social media and stuff too, they all say deliver massive value. And so like they are essentially telling you, and I don't think that people really like know, like they're not getting to the crux of like what they're saying. They are literally saying, put yourself beneath the customer, right? Or like at least get on their level and understand how you can help them get to the next level, help understand how you can solve their problem, whatever their problem is. And I believe that too. And it's interesting that you like connect that to like God as well, because it was weird. So this is the other like kind of sign I feel like that I was having. I'm not joking you. And I told Heather, I think I'm going crazy because I keep getting this sign that I think I need to give myself up to God. And she's like, why? And it was every single time that I would listen to some podcasts or whatever, every time that I would listen to these podcasts, I was hearing these creators talk about when they gave themselves up to God, that's when they had massive explosion. And that's when they like their career like had a huge trajectory. So they were trying to give value to people, but they gave themselves up to God. One guy literally, he's known for just kind of being like a cocaine addict, I guess, and like just a crazy person. But he said he was at the lowest point in his life and he was trying to make the creator thing happen. And he finally decided to say his first prayer. Like he was a Muslim before, and he decided to say his first prayer to God, and he said, Jesus is king. And after that, that's like his like phrase, Jesus is king. That's like his thing. And immediately after that, he goes viral on like social media, on Twitch or whatever it was. And his life has only gone up since then. Like he's become a millionaire basically overnight and all this crazy stuff. And he says that his main goal and message is to convert people to Christianity now. And he's like converted 1,400 different people to Christianity. He's gotten a bunch of emails, whatever. And he says that he does this all for the one purpose of just God. And then the other guy, and it was each podcast that I was listening to by this guy specifically, somehow the topic of God would come up, and he like him and then his guests would each say this thing about like, as soon as they like turn their life over to God, their anxiety went away or their depression went away. And then their career just skyrocketed like a rocket ship, So yeah, that's, it's interesting that you say all that because that was my other like, kind of like, I feel like he was like, wake up. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that there's certainly, something to that to a degree. I mean, there's a section in the book of Acts that Luke writes, the historian and physician. He said that David, after David had fulfilled, King David of the big king of Israel, after he fulfilled the purposes of God, he died. I mean, what better could be written on one's tombstone? If God does exist, and we assume that he has a purpose for you and a purpose for me, fulfilling that, I would think, would be the most significant thing. Now, for some people, it does result in what you have just described. I mean, once we say yes to God, the scriptures, mysteriously say that he then begins to actually live within each person, to begin to transform us into the best version of ourselves that we are intended to be, which can sometimes result in achievement at levels that we never dreamed of.
Right.
But the first followers of Jesus decided to follow him, and their circumstances in their lives could not be described at all in any way of being, quote, successful.
Sure.
I mean, they suffered hardship, difficulty, and so there is no guarantee that once we say yes, all of a sudden we go viral or the money's going to be in the account. There's one of my favorite scriptures in one of the Minor Prophets says, "Oh, though the fig tree has no fruit on it, and there's no cattle in the field, and the harvest isn't there." In other words, though things aren't happening successfully in my life, still I know the truth about my relationship with God. And I think this has to be the unconditional offering of our lives, to say, I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I know, given the tremendous sacrifice you've made for me, I owe my life to you. And take me wherever you desire to take me. And this is then the pathway of the greatest, living life at the highest level. Jesus says, "I came that they may have life and have it to the full."
Yeah.
And I will tell you, as a guy now in his 60s, that I feel more youthful and more vibrant than, even though the legs and the knees aren't quite as quick as they used to be than ever. And it's because this youthfulness that continues to come. Paul says that although the outer body is decaying, the inner man is being renewed. I mean, it's like you get more athletic, in the soul that we talked about earlier. It becomes younger with time as opposed to older. Yeah, which is like bizarre.
Right. Yeah, and so with all what you just said too, I just want to make super clear that we talked about like maybe going to church or like doing a prayer or whatever, and I told Heather, I was like, I don't want to do that for the simple fact that like I don't want my relationship to be predicated on the fact of whether or not I think I'm going to be successful.
Yeah.
And like that feels fake to me to be like, even to like God, the same way I wouldn't do it to like one of my friends, like do something because I think I'm going to get something out of them or whatever, I didn't want to go to church or like say I have prayed since then, but I don't do it often, and like, but because I was having those signs, I didn't want to do it just for the simple fact of maybe I'm going to go viral or maybe I'm going to have some sort of success if I do this. I'm like, no, that's the reason for me to not do it now, because I don't want to feel fake in what I'm doing.
That's why I like you.
Yeah.
One of the many reasons. And so, yeah, that's good. But once Paul says, we die to ourselves.
Yep.
In other words, we die to our agenda, which you just described. And it's an authentic death.
Yeah.
We go to our own funeral to say, I'm my agenda now is to follow this one who is legitimately called me to do so. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows? The roof could be blown off the place.
Yeah.
In terms of, because God will only bring into our lives, as a loving Father would, that which is best for us.
Right.
And for you, it could be, just, a mega presence that is needed in the world today. But we can trust the guidance coming from one who is far superior to us in any measure.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter to me what it is or what it's not. I'm going to continue doing the things that I enjoy regardless of, what happens because of, God making it big or not.
Right.
I enjoy doing the things, so I'm going to keep doing the things. And if that's not what the calling is, well, I'm still going to do the things, and then maybe I'll find the path later on.
That's good.
I do want to quick visit, if you're okay with sharing, the loss of your daughter. Mm-hmm. How did that have an effect on your faith or your just life in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, at first, the first 24 hours, I felt like somebody had handed me a script. I did a little drama in high school and stuff. I had to memorize scripts. And I felt they handed me a script, said, you're going to play the role here of a guy who's lost his daughter. And so I felt like I was living somebody else's life. And then after about 24 hours, I realized that, I can't set the script down on the table and walk back into my normal life, that this was something that's actually happened.
Yeah.
The mist started, falling out, and I began to see that this has actually been, a reality. And I remember laying in my bed the second night, staring at the ceiling, and I had this really odd experience. I had this whiteboard that was completely filled with everything I learned in graduate school about all the evidences for the faith that I had, why Jesus, almost assuredly rose from the dead, why we can trust the Bible, the evidences for God's existence, the uniqueness of Christianity, all this stuff. And I saw this big, massive hand go from one end of the whiteboard to the other and wipe the whole thing clean.
Jeez.
And it's like, I am willing right now to start over. And the only thing I care about, I don't want anybody sending me flowers or giving me cards or anything, but I'm mainly interested right now in what has actually happened to my daughter's body. I know it's been destroyed in this accident. What's happened to her body and her personality? I mean, the most unbelievably, beautifully unique personality that you can ever imagine was and is, I believe, Stacy.
Yeah.
And so I started going through, what are my options? I mean, atheism. I clicked through that. Hinduism, reincarnation, all this stuff, and all of it. Maybe there was a little bit of a sense of wonderment about it, but none of it both meant the rigorous demands of my intellect. In other words, how can I know this is true? And also the desire of my heart in terms of just, wanting it to be true. And then I see this hand extended to me, with a crucifix mark in the palm of it. And the God that I had been serving is also a God of suffering. And so the thing that brought me through it was this, was the sufferings of God. And there's a quote that has been my mainstay over the last years, and it's by a British author, Dorothy Sayers, and she says this: God chose to make man as he is, limited in suffering and subject to death. He, God, had the honesty and courage to take his own medicine. Whatever game he is playing with his creation, he has kept his own rules and played fair. He can exact nothing from man that he has not exacted from himself. He has himself gone through the whole of human experience, from the trivial irritations of family life and the cramping restrictions of hard work and lack of money, to the worst horrors of pain, humiliation, defeat, despair, and death. When he was a man, he played the man. He was born in poverty and died in disgrace and thought it was all worthwhile. And it helped me to realize, if God was distant and indifferent from my suffering, I would have raised my middle finger to the heavens and said, I'm moving on to something else. But when I realized that he identified with and participated in and could empathize with the gut punch that our whole family had received, it was easier for me to continue to move on. So thank you for that question. I mean, that's an intense one, and there's much more to say about it. But the sufferings of God, to think that, people just picture God as sitting up in a cloud somewhere ready to judge people, and they don't see him, who he really is, as one who has suffered and offered himself for the very people that he's created.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. There's a quote from this rapper musician guy Machine Gun Kelly, and this was a gut punch for me. This week, in his song, he says, "I believe God had to put me through hell so I could learn me a lesson." And so I genuinely think, and I guess you can tell me a little bit more about what you think about this, but based on your experience with that, I thought about you because we were going to do the podcast. And for me, it was like, yeah, I have gone through so much in my life. And I think that it was to learn lessons for everything that I had gone through. And then eventually, as I get older, learn more lessons. Now I feel like I have to go through less turmoil. I have to go through some big stuff, but less. Do you think that there was an ultimate lesson for you at the end of that?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes people will say, look at all the good that has come.
Sure.
And I could sit here and you and I could talk for the next, 4 or 5 hours about really good things that have been linked to to the accident.
Sure.
Relationships that have come, situations that have happened. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But my wife and Sue and I would sit here and say, we would trade all that to be able to get up and leave from your studio today and go out and have coffee with my daughter.
I can imagine, yeah.
And so, I think, one of my mentors, soon after Stacy's passing, looked at me and she said, my heart breaks for you. And then she gestured up and she said, his heart breaks as well. So I think in the mystery of it all, again, whatever game is happening out there, God did not usher this into our lives to say, I want to teach Steve and Sue something.
Sure.
We live in a horribly fallen world where evil is running wild. I mean, this man had a medical emergency and couldn't control his car at a high speed, and the brain wasn't functioning the way it was designed to. We look throughout the world today and we see more people entrapped in slavery now than any other time in human history. We see, the scriptures say that the earth, the creation is groaning, and we see that in global warming and the hardships that are coming as a result of it. There's a measure of evil that is unleashed and destroying people's lives that will one day be completely eradicated. Sometimes our behavior, there is a consequence that quickly comes to it where a lesson is intended.
Yeah.
You go out and drive and you're too tipsy or you're too drunk and you have a near miss and you have an oh my goodness moment. That was designed for you to say, hey, listen, you've been spared.
Yeah.
You learn from that. But there are other things where, innocent things happen to people that their behavior is not at all connected to a difficult thing that happens.
Sure.
And that's where the mystery is.
So with that all being said, and this is going to be the last question that I ask you for today. I appreciate your time so much, Steve. It's been great. Like and subscribe. What do you think the answer to all the evil in the world is and the turmoil? I know we can probably all guess what your answer is at this point, but I want to hear the answer from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, many solutions have been proposed. Better education and better policies, and all that stuff is really helpful. And again, I'm not a huge fan of religion, but I'm a huge fan of this very unique and powerful person, Jesus, who existed, and I believe by faith he lives his life through me. Where he lists a bunch of horrible stuff that was going on. The list is just like X-rated. And then he says, from the heart of man, from humanity, these things come. So his perspective is that the heart has to be transformed in order for societies and cultures to be transformed. So you get a collective of people that are transforming hearts, turning people from haters into lovers. And we've been seeing that up in the prisons in the state of Wisconsin, where we've been invited to come in and do biblical teaching within in the darkest places of society, because across the nation we're seeing that men and women who have been discarded, have done horrible things, but have had horrible things done to them as well, understand the love of God and the sacrifice of God for the first time in their life. They're like, holy smokes, I do have value. And they're beginning to make phone calls into the dark crime centers of our cities, talking to young men and women who are about to commit violent crimes, and they're saying, I've experienced forgiveness authentically, and I'm asking you to set down your weapon, because you don't want to be where I am, serving a life sentence up in the maximum security prison up in Waupun. And so, one person at a time, if those who are following Jesus would spread this message of peace and reconciliation and forgiveness to others, it was God's intended approach. He didn't go out. He could have easily gone out. Jesus could have to the major cultural centers and got up on a podium and spoken to thousands of people. Instead, he chose to spend time with just a few, 12, and even 3 more intimately. And if we were to do the same thing and continue to, and it's being done all over the world, that is a ticket, I think, to righting so many of the problems that are out there. But it's a long process, but it's done slowly, one step at a time.
Sure. Steve, I appreciate your time so much. Every time we get to talk, it's like a great pleasure. So again, thank you for being on the show. Thanks for talking with me.
Well, thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. See you guys later. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We'll talk to you in the next one. Hey, I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. That was great.
Those are great questions. My goodness.